Alright, all you big cat lovers, it's time to take a stroll. We're gonna walk round the compound.
Bingo, here we are, sunset times. It's not, okay. I was about to say oh, it's the only time. It's technically, it's not. But it's the best time to get out and film. It's a time where I don't have to worry about my phone potentially overheating. And then, taking a random nap on me. Which was happening with one of the fancy casts. The last one I did. I was walking down by Nadal's just yakking about something. And I don't even know how long I was yakking for before I realized. I looked down and then I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not recording. And it's very hot outside. Hi, mister. Hi. Don't hiss, be nice. Good boy. He's a good boy. Hello, conflicted cougar. He's a good boy. Yeah. We have, the stoic, does not wear his heart on his sleeve, difficult to read, does not operate on the same wavelength. He actually is going to be probably, he is probably the most, realistically, he's actually probably the most cougary of all the cougars that we have. He's probably the one that would actually, if there was a social club of wild cougars, the Royal Society of Water Buffaloes, but for cougars. And it was you can't be weird captive cougar. You have to be cool wild guy cougar. He'd probably fit in. I think that's one thing you gotta probably take away. Our cats, all of them, are not always going to be the strongest representations of how these animals are, when they're just left to their devices and able to just kind of do what they do out in the wild. Which, that's also another kind of consideration. You have to sit there and think, from the Maslow perspective, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. There is something to be said about that. We've talked about that before, but just to recap, I think at the very bottom are just basic necessities of life function, physiologic, just food, air, water. And then the next level above that is safety and security needs. And then I believe the level above that are social considerations. And then above that, I believe, are, self-actualization. And it's one of those kind of things where if you don't have your physiologic or your safety needs met, then it's hard for you to care about or prioritize socialization. But these animals here, they've grown up long term in environments where they have their physiologic needs met, and they probably, even though they are instinctual creatures, definitely as evidenced by this guy, how he behaves frequently. They're able to maybe indulge in some of the higher levels that they might not normally be able to indulge in their own way, in their own relative complexity. Because they're mammals, they're not as They have mammal brain. They don't have primate brain. So instead of, because Maslow, the thing is, like, it's Maslow's pyramid. That's what the hierarchy looks like when you put a graphical depiction. For these guys, it might be like Maslow's dirt mound. But you have to sit there and think, you know, these animals, their wild counterparts, they have to be so much more considerate of physiologic. They have to be so much more, so much of their life is like, I need to find water, I need to find food, I need to find water, I need to find food. I need to be safe. Need to find water, need to find food. Need to be safe. It's like that. And then, if you're lucky, you get to then express, you know, socialization and social stuff. Hi. And I guess for these guys, it's a little bit more of it is a little bit more kind of like hardwired. So you can't use a thing like Maslow, which was designed to meet the needs, to describe and meet the needs of humans, of people. So it's not appropriate to sit there. I think it's just kind of a fun thought experiment or a fun talking point to kind of go about, to bandy about. But the whole point of that whole thing and the whole premise behind it is that I imagine, now if you took these guys and you took our tigers, the lions, cougars, and everything, and then if you took them the exact same genetic composition, and even the ones that are quote unquote tigers, I still think that they'd be able to, you know, if they were raised out in the wild, you know, they'd be able to make a lot of them would be able to make a solid go at it. At the same, at similar percentages of success as other, you know, same size populations. So I'm guessing, like, let's say magical experiment time. Every single one of our tigers, which we've got right now, I don't know, what, like 15, 20, something. Which is crazy. That's for some people that's a lot, and then for me, it's like, man, it's like so crazy that we only have 20 tigers. Only, oh my gosh, we have so few tigers. It's like, how many places in the world? I don't know. It's weird. We live a weird life here. Our experience is not like other people's. Ezzy Juju. I think just for the sake of like a thought experiment. So let's say that if you were to just take 20 random tigers in the wild, same genders, and then you were to have like these tigers that live here, and then you were to create a simulation where it's like, all right, we're going to turn back the clock. You're all going to start out as cubs. You're all going to get raised by respective moms in this kind of like, you know, this wild simulation environment. We're going to see how the ones that they were going to grow up in the wild regardless, and then you guys, these guys. And I think that a lot of them probably just like that the data wouldn't, I don't think the data would be particularly different from each other. There may be a little bit of outliers, just because then you'd have to sit there and say, look, what constitutes the wild, and then which wild are we talking about? Especially considering that these guys, they're an amalgamation of like different subspecies, Bengals and Sumatrans and Siberians and stuff like that. So that's, I'm not saying it's, you know, like, luckily this is we're just the thought experiment, the imagination. We're getting on the school bus with old man Frizzle We're figuring some stuff out. I'm Potato. I'm Mr. Potato Head. I'm Mr. Potato Head. Senior likes to poop in his pool. The chief tub pooper. Yeah. That's his thing. 2 in a row. 2 wonderful, nice, good, clean pools. Dumped in them both. And he's so proud of himself. So proud of himself. And he ate like a ridiculous amount of food. The last feed. Not this, just this, because we just fed last night. But the feed before that, he got a body, and he didn't want to leave that body go. It was like a small, like, horse carcass. And he didn't want to lock up. And he wasn't even being a jerk about it, because a lot of times he can be really possessive and, you know, like, get away, But this was more just like, no, thank you, I'm not done. And it's like, it's just like kind of like fat and grease. Because like sometimes, like when it starts to kind of, yeah, it sits out. And then sometimes like the fat will actually just get all greasy. And he's like, ooh, that's how I like it. It's almost kind of like, yeah, it's like the horse carcass has been kind of, it's been sitting on the counter at the diner. It's all greasy now. It's got the wax paper on it. Look at these snuffle guys. Look at these snuffle bugs. But anyway, I wonder if I wonder how different the data would be if you were to then just like simulate just, okay, we're gonna simulate a period of like 15 years, you know, just to account for average tiger life expectancy out in the wild is going to be like 8 to 10 years. But I imagine that there's outliers. There's some who, because physiologically they can make it pretty long. And I would argue to say that if a tiger doesn't have like any kind of like weird kind of whoopsie doodles, if they actually can stay relatively healthy and they don't rack up a lot of injuries, they could probably still stay in relatively fit to fight form into their teens. I know that I've seen different documentaries with lions. There was like a 19-year-old lioness as part of a pride, and she was still going out and hunting. So, again, that's probably the extreme exception. More than likely, out in the wild, it's an unforgiving environment. They don't last usually long into like, they might make it to double digits and then that's it. But yeah, basically that's like that real nature versus nurture kind of thing. That's the real kind of, it's a nature versus nurture question, because the nurture would be the same, because they all, like the ones already in the wild would be, they would already be in their wild environment. Then these guys would, so like that would be a level playing field. They would all be growing up in the same environment, same circumstances. That's environmental factor. That's nurture, even though they're in nature. But in this instance, weirdly enough, the nature is the nurture. And the real nature is, does their genetic mishmashism, does that play a significant factor into long-term survival rates? That's a kind of a fascinating, that's an interesting question. And then that's a stinky face. That's a stinky face. And it's the only reason I went into that whole long thing was because I just had the idea pop into my head. Like, I'll bet you, if we had a conference where it's like, okay, we took 20 wild tigers and then the R20 here, and we're like, hey, there's some croissants, coffee, we're gonna do a meet and greet. I'll bet and let's pretend like let's say that could happen. Another hypothetical thought experiment type thing. Also, in this one, the parameters are set to like tigers understand like the concept of like professional social gatherings. That's the parameters of this one. So would it, okay, in that instance, would it become cliquish? And would the wild tigers be just like, who are these nerds? Would our tigers be kind of like the band geeks, kind of like, well, yo, these other guys are kind of scary. Look at this. Kind of like, there's like the first season of Vikings, which, I mean, kind of, it fast tracks over like actual historical kind of events, but when the Danes first started to make encroachments into England, and like England at the time had zero knowledge of this. They'd never seen a Viking before. They didn't know what a Viking was. And then all of a sudden, like these like really hard-nosed, like battle-hardened, like savage, like this warrior culture just descended onto like their land. And the English at the time, they're just like, wow, what is this? What is this? I wonder, would it be kind of like that? Would our tigers be just kind of like the, and then the wild ones, they're basically, you know, they've got their long ships and their circle shields and they're drinking blood and they're like, oh my goodness, these ones are quite a rowdy bunch, aren't they? Oh, hello all you big cat lovers out there. It's me, Derek, again. Welcome to another super duper fantastic episode of the Walk Around the Compound webcast. Hi, hello. What is going on here? Oh, whoa. Sorry. Oh, come on. Go back to it. I just made it mad. It was pulling a dead spider. Like a big one. Come on, go back. Go back and get it. You remember where you put it. You remembered. Yeah, there you go. You're close. You're close. You are so close. Okay, you way overshot it. Okay, yep, back. Back. Find it. No, north. Colder, hotter, warmer. Getting warmer, scorching, colder, getting colder. Okay. No, wait, What do you... This is frustrating. There we go. Found it. Look at that thing. Isn't that wild? Yeah, that's a big fat dead spider. That wasp, that was it, tarantula hawk or tarantula killer? Even though that's not a tarantula, it's like a wolf spider. But you know, much like what was depicted in the show and throughout like history, the English they developed like resilience. They either fought against Vikings, they allied with certain, because you know, it's when you think of Vikings, it's not all just like, we are all one homogenized, like, no, it's a bunch of like smaller clans that all like share like a similar language, similar culture, similar religion, but oftentimes wildly disparate, you know, territorial claims and appeals to authority. Who do we listen to? Oh. that's an interesting part of history. That's when, you know, a more notable kind of time when your polytheistic cultures met and became adversarially aligned to monotheistic. Look at starting to get a little bit darker. But I remember hearing and reading about just from like, think of it like not in like a metaphysical kind of sense, but just from like a psychological and a sociologic perspective, a historical perspective. I find it fascinating that the advent and the rise of monotheistic traditions, which eventually, you know, by and large replaced polytheistic traditions. Because you have to sit there and think, like, the world was polytheistic, and then over the course of a few centuries, maybe like 1,000 to 1,500 years, the world kind of switched from polytheistic to monotheistic, and that's a big deal. Hi, sugar pie. And again, if you look at it just from a sociologic perspective, what does that mean potentially for large groups of people, how they align themselves, value systems that they have and they hold? And one of the interesting ones that some people that I've heard that they would point to was that in a lot of polytheistic traditions, it's easy, the separation between, you know, a lot of the natural things and things you can see in the touch and stuff like that. There's much more of a connection between natural, like direct line between natural order and the divine. What causes the wind? Well, we have a God for that, you know, kind of a thing. And then when you start to shift over towards monotheistic tradition, the thought of the divine becomes much more of a kind of an obscured and almost more abstract. Like it becomes more difficult to quantify, and when it becomes more difficult to define and quantify, it actually lends itself in a weird way towards more of an idea like, oh, there's something that is like an aspirant, you know, kind of notion. And people say that because they, like in a polytheistic tradition, it's very easy for more powerful people to basically say just like, hey, you know, all those gods, yeah, you know, like I checked the records. I went on to my ancestry.com. We have that now. And guess what? Found out a long lost distant relative to that Odin guy. Wouldn't you know it? And that can maybe, like, you know, artificially raise your stock. Now, I'm not sitting there saying that, and it's never, its position has never been, you know, manipulated or taken advantage of in a monotheistic. No. It's never happened. But what I'm saying is it's harder for people in positions of power or people in divinity, you know, things to basically say like, I'm literally related to, you know, that divine, because in a lot of the monotheistic, they can basically say like, well, we're all related to the, you know, the divine in that difficult to quantify and that difficult to define way. And then what does that do for large groups of people? How does that move forward societies in different ways than polytheistic? I think it's that type of stuff is fascinating. I do. I find that stuff to be really, really interesting. What about some of those ideas like were appealing? What like and they took hold? It's interesting. Printy, printy, print pants. Printy, printy, print, print. Sharpening your peats. Very nice. Get it. Get it, girl. Get you some peat scratchings. Nice. Perfect time. Perfect time to sign out. Just enough light to say see you later. All right. Thank you for watching this episode of the Walk Around the Compound webcast. Hashtag Dorbus Ward in the comment section below. Like and subscribe for all of your big cat goodness. And if you want to learn more about the facility around me, you can always visit the website carerescuetexas.com for more information. You keep them tigers fed. Big shout out to the extra fancy patrons. I see you. You are so fancy, and thank you so much for your continued support. We'll see you next time. All right, bye-bye.
Monkeys buttered toast. Munchie saw a ghost. Mika weighs the most.